More classic stories about Kansas life through the decades are queued up and ready to roll.
On this edition of Hatteberg's People.
Once I made a decision to spend my life with Mary, regardless of what happens with the disease, I don't have any regrets at all. I feel like I've lived a full, rich life.
Their dreams were derailed by a debilitating illness, but their love and devotion was not. Pat and Mary Tenbrink were inseparable in both sickness and in health. It's a relationship lesson for the ages. Coming up also,
I wish people would understand that this is a job.
Mary Covington had one of the most important jobs there is, being a devoted mom and homemaker. Yet some of her peers didn't seem to get it. See how she pushed back against criticism for making her family her full-time career. Plus,
when we're together, we always dress alike. And lots of times I'll go down to see her and she has on the same thing I have on.
Hazel, Manley, and Hildred Mccammon had everybody in Wellington sing double. Then it was the entire country when they starred in a national TV commercial. But did they actually use the product they were pitching? Stick around and find out. And
we don't put a lot of emphasis on individual success. It's the crew, it's the boat that wins, and the kids seem to pick up on that.
he was a world-class athlete who taught young people to be champions whether they won the race or not. It is a lesson in camaraderie and teamwork on the Arkansas River. Also,
they say every town has a crackpot, so I fulfill that place in this town, I guess.
Glenn Stark was far too humble. His art may have been a little quirky, but it was the pride of Kingman. See how he lives on. Coming up, I'm Larry Hatteberg.
I'm Susan Peters. Those are some of Larry's classic stories we will rewind and revisit on this edition of Hatteberg's People.
These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student. Hi, everybody. Great to have you with us today.
We begin with a powerful love story about a man, a woman, and dreams that took a detour.
Pete and Mary Tenbrink were soulmates, looking toward a bright future together, and it seemed as though the world was their oyster. Then, dark clouds circled, and life took a tragic turn.
It became clear that their marriage vows to have and to hold in sickness and in health really meant something.
Every day there's a pocket of joy, and regardless how dark things can get sometimes. Hey, look at me, Mary. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Once I made a decision to spend my life with Mary, regardless of what happens with the disease, I don't have any regrets at all. I feel like I've lived a full, rich life. I know there was a point in my life where I came to a crossroads. I had to make a decision whether I was going to pursue my career and my ambitions. I struggled with it. I was in college and I was doing well, and I had a career in art. I mean things were falling in place for me, and I was doing a lot of artwork, and I had to say no. I'm going to stay with my wife, and I'm going to take care of Mary. Mary's so sick now. We've only got a window of about 3 or 4 hours a day where she's really strong and and she's doing fairly well. And we just try to seize that day. That 4 hours, and we try to fill it up with everything that we can. In the quiet, still moment of the day, there's such a peace there, and there's such a joy. And it's such a joy to wake up and to see my wife next to my side, and she looks at me and she just says, "Pat, I love you." Every day. I get that every day, and I wouldn't trade that for nothing, His grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace shall lead me home.
Oh, milk pan. What?
Mary passed away from multiple sclerosis about a year later in 2002. Pat never remarried. He says Mary was the love of his life and no one else could ever take her place.
But Pat went to work as an activity coordinator at the Timbers Living Community for people with disabilities, and that's where he and Mary had been living. Now, he retired a few years ago, but he spends his time now doing his art and says he'll forever be thankful for Mary and the love they shared. When I did that story, and as you could see by the story, she was in a wheelchair,
Right.
could hardly talk and all of these things. But when they were together, their love was so powerful that when I did the story, it brought tears to my eyes.
I bet it did.
These two incredible people who were just meant for each other, and just to be around them lifted me up to their
Did it
level
really?
of existence.
Did it?
And it was stunning, and I just felt so close to those people when I did that story.
I like the way you put it, to their level of existence.
Yes.
They obviously have a higher level than
Certainly do.
many other people.
Absolutely, and I just love doing that story.
Life is full of choices, and in 1986, Mary Covington had made the choice to be a stay-at-home mom. Managing the household was her full-time job.
But this was not long after the so-called women's lib movement took hold, and many of Mary's peers didn't consider being a housewife to be the vogue thing to do. But she stood her ground.
Which one do you want, Crystal?
I want this.
You want a book? Let's get one that's your age group to color, because this is a bigger person. How about I'm a
this one
mother.
shapes them?
I take care of my children. I take care of my house. I take care of the finances, the yard, and a lot of the little things around the house just so my husband doesn't have to, and so we can spend more time as a family. I wish people would understand that this is a job.
How you're feeling, huh?
The conversation level is really low. They talk about things that are important to them, and the rewards seem small, but in the long run, the thank you and the pride that they find in a picture that they've colored that I've helped them with, that's my paycheck. Let's squeak. Don't run, Crystal, you'll fall. A recent experience was a party that I had myself. And we were standing in the kitchen, and a group of us women were talking, and they asked me what I did.
Let me cook dinner first.
And I said, well, I'm a housewife, and I work at home. I take care of my kids, and I take care of a lot of the house responsibilities. And the reaction was, oh, and everybody's face kind of dropped like, oh, this is all that you became? You did so well in school, and you did all these things, and you're a housewife? Can I make dinner?
This is...
A couple of the men that overheard the conversation would ask my husband, well, does she plan to work? Or is she going to get a job? Or when is she going to get a job? They feel like we stay in our pajamas and wear our rollers and watch soap operas and eat potato chips all day long. And a lot of people ask when I'm going to get a job, and I feel like I work all the time. There's no break because it continues on the weekend. Okay, let's thank you, God, okay? I need to be there. If I were to die tomorrow or something were to happen to me, he would be lost because of the fact that I keep up on all the bill paying and I know where the money goes and how all the records are kept, and he's not totally aware of all that. You're all right, sweetheart. I have a lot of sympathy for the women that have to work and that don't get this opportunity to stay home like I do, because there's a lot of rewards for my kids that they give me that money can't buy. I want them to realize that I work too, and that just because I stay home doesn't make me less of a person, because I am a person, and I may not bring home a paycheck, but I do have an important job. Catch it. Now throw it real hard, Crystal. Throw it high. Good girl.
Well, the story did change as her kids got older. Mary ended up finishing her degree at Wichita State, and she's been teaching now high school chemistry for 23 years, and she loves it.
And she's still there.
Still there.
I
Yeah,
love it.
absolutely.
She's at Wichita East.
Yeah.
Mary has no regrets about her time as a stay-at-home mom. She says both her kids turned out very well, thank you. Son and daughter both have successful careers and loving families of their own. Her son is actually an assistant district attorney in Kansas City.
Fascinating to see how people's lives end up and what happens to them, 30 years out. Don't we all wish we had a crystal ball and we could see that in real time? Anyway, it was great fun. Congratulations, sir.
A long time ago and across the sea, Charles Harding was an elite oarsman in England. Then he brought that talent to Wichita.
And when I shot this story back in 2005, Charles had shifted his focus to coaching others. He was teaching local teenagers some important life skills way out on the river. On the river, it is the shimmering majesty of muscle, oars, and sleek boats. They glide like a ballet across the Arkansas River.
I think this is a very nice river. It's wide enough, it's deep enough. It makes you much stronger. You can't stop in rowing. It's not like if something goes wrong you can just stop and fix it. You have to keep going.
Charles Harding coaches the Wichita Rowing Association Juniors program, and it is from this warehouse that Wichita teenagers are exposed to this centuries-old sport.
I think the kids like to be in a sport that's different.
Harding grew up in Britain. He was a member of the Walton-on-Thames Rowing Club, and in the mid-1970s, he and 3 of his mates won the Queen's Silver Jubilee Race, a race that only occurs every 25 years. And to this day, he and the other 3 oarsmen are friends for life.
We have a connection that no one else can have.
Today, he operates a travel business, but in his spare time, teaches these teenagers the art of rowing. Recently, some of his rowers won their division competing with other Kansas schools.
They build up a friendship, a relationship with other kids their own age, and their only connection is rowing, and that will stay with them, hopefully, their whole lives.
It is on the water where speed is paramount and teamwork is essential.
We don't put a lot of emphasis on individual success. It's the crew, it's the boat that wins, and the kids seem to pick up on that.
Practicing 3 times a week,
Stay in the middle.
these teens receive more than aching muscles. They are a part of a time-honored tradition that builds camaraderie, teamwork, and forges friendships for life.
A beautiful sport to watch.
Now, a decade and a half later, Charles says he's still rowing and coaching, and the junior rowing program is still growing. Isn't it nice when people continue the talents that they have to share with the younger generation?
It is, and it's so important for that younger generation who, on their iPad or whatever all the time, to get out and row and learn something else.
Exactly, and it feels so good out there, and you're doing something for your body,
Now to 1989, when a pair of Kansas twins became national celebrities.
Yeah, Hazel, Manley, and Hildred Mccammon always seem to attract an audience, whether in person or on TV.
For the past 40 years, the Lutz twins have competed against each other in the county fair, and their peaches have always tied for first.
Hazel Manley lives here with her family in Wellington. Mildred Mccammon lives in Oklahoma. They are identical twins. Even at 82, their resemblance is uncanny.
Yes, when we're together, we always dress alike. And lots of times I'll go down to see her and she has on the same thing I have on.
And like other twins, they find they even think alike.
When I'm calling her, she's been trying to call me. Or if we put a card in the mail, lots of times that will be the same card that I've bought up here. If we're sending a card to our nieces or our nephews, might be the same card, and we did that many times with our mother for Mother's Day and Valentine's time. By the same card.
This year, Gladys upset the apple cart.
But it's this commercial that continues to get them recognized.
Now it's war. Whether you're canning, freezing, or serving fresh, use Fruit Fresh.
Shopping together in Wellington, the twins needed a few things for dinner.
Well, I'm looking for Fruit Fresh.
Yes, folks, they really use it.
Hazel had 2 cans of it on hands, and of course they took pictures of it. And to think that I started way back in, well, I was 31 using Fruit Fresh.
The hunt continues.
Where's the Fruit Fresh?
Fruit Fresh, oh boy, I'll have to find out just a minute.
I don't see it here. I can't imagine where the Fruit Fresh is because it was in this aisle, I thought, when I see vegetables. Right here it is. This is one. Mm-hmm. You want one? No, I've got 4 ordered. Oh, you have from my man. Oh, I see.
So if you've ever wondered if the folks who pitch the products on television use those products, Hazel and Hildred are living proof they do. Now, not only do they buy the same things at the grocery store, but larger purchases have also had startling similarities.
We went down to Hildred's one time, and she had bought a television, a brand new television. Well, ours is still sitting here. And we said, well, we have a television. So we looked at hers, and they're just exactly alike. We didn't even know they were going to buy a television.
Same with the car one time.
Yeah.
Same car.
Well, 30 years later, both Hazel and Hildred, both long gone. But for a while in the 1980s, they were stars. They even appeared on Late Night with David Letterman. They were so cute together because, you know, for all of their life, they had dressed the same, acted the same, lived in different cities. But when they got together, man, they were so cute.
They were
unbelievable.
Very entertaining. I'm going to look that commercial up on Google. I'm interested to see if we can see it today.
I think it's still on there.
Okay. There are all sorts of artists out there. There's the hoity-toity bunch with their avant-garde lifestyles and grand gallery openings. And then there are artists like Glenn Stark.
Now, Glenn had a style of his own. Now, he wasn't out to necessarily impress anybody, but it turns out he did anyway. This story is from 2001.
They say every town has a crackpot, so I fulfill that place in this town, I guess.
Glenn Stark is no crackpot. These concrete figures outside his Kingman home just mean he's oozing with creativity.
If you're an artist, you are because you want to be and because you can't help it, not because you try to make anything of it. I do feel kind of guilty having barefooted out here like that. Look. Good night. Red wings and yellow wings mixed, aren't they?
Yeah.
Now, Glenn and Mary haven't been married all that long, but you'd never know it.
God knew what he was doing.
Their spouses died, and Glenn didn't want to whittle his life away, although he's done a pretty good job of it.
I'm a primitive artist. In other words, I say I'm a hillbilly crackpot artist, but I like to make things with my hands, always have. Mostly cowboys and Indians and down-to-earth things that we associate with and stuff like that. I had to go to the doctor to get a B12 shot, and it amused me so, and I had to go back and make one of these to show it to the doctor and the nurse now.
Blessed with a wonderful sense of humor and surrounded by his wood carvings, it's in his basement where he feels the soul of the wood.
When I rub my fingers over it, it's like caressing something. But wood just feels like that somehow the life of that tree is still there, and you can kind of blend with the life that was in the tree that's carried on. But I do love to make wood. Now, I've done this to some extent since it's about in the 2nd grade, I guess. They called him Old Glenn. They named him after me. The limbs aren't exactly right, but that's the way they are, and we call it a palm tree. Oh, I tell you that
We're blessed and we're grateful.
she's just the greatest little gal that ever was. I'm the luckiest man that ever was, too.
Well, it's a cliche, but it's often true. Artists seldom become famous until after they die. Now, Glenn displayed his art mainly at his house, as you saw in the story. Then, after he died in 2014, the city of Kingman named a park after him to display many of his greatest work. Now, he did both wood carvings and concrete sculptures. These are mostly concrete with metal framework. Glen Stark Park is just off Highway 14 near the Nenaskaw River in Kingman. And I think he would be very happy to see that, as any artist is, that their work lives on. Because, you know, you want to preserve your art.
Absolutely.
And the city of Kingman did that. That's
And
great.
not only that, but it's amazing how many things are in Kansas that we don't know of. There's this park in Kingman with this guy's art.
Exactly.
We need to go there and see it.
Absolutely, and I'll bet there'll be a crowd down there.
I
next
bet
week.
there will be.
All right. Well, down in Pittsburg, Kansas, there used to be a man named Johnny Marietta, and he had an unusual collection.
Let's let the Larry Hatteberg from 1984 tell us all about it.
People collect a lot of strange things. You know, they collect stamps, barbed wire, yarn, you name it, and it's collected. But have you ever heard of anyone collecting railroad cars? Now, I'm not talking about the little tiny HO gauge cars. I'm talking about full-sized trains. It was the iron horse that helped tame the western frontier, and since then, Americans have had a love affair with trains. Johnny Marietta of Pittsburg, Kansas, is working on the railroad, his railroad, in his backyard. And these real train cars are all part of his collection.
I don't know why I ever started collecting railroad cars, and they weigh 90 ton when I could be collecting postage stamps.
Well, the reason he does it is simple. Johnny Marietta loves everything about trains, so much so that he's got 4 90-ton cars sitting in his backyard, and they're all refurbished, just like this one.
There's always work to keep them up, to keep them in shape. Now I've got to repaint these cars again. It's a very big job. It's too much of a job for a 71-year-old man, but I enjoy it, every minute of it, every day. Sometimes I get awful tired, but I fool with them all the time. I live railroad every day, every day.
Johnny misses the days when he could come down here to the old Pittsburgh depot and just watch the trains go by.
Yeah, I miss it very, very much. It's a very sickening to me to see it all gone. I bought the last ticket that was ever bought out of this depot here.
And then he bought the depot.
It's in bad shape in it. It's just gone by, it's just goodbye, that's all I can say. It's a thing of the past.
But people in Pittsburgh who know Johnny Marietta understand that he does not easily let the past slip by, especially where trains are concerned.
This is an old railroad caboose, a Frisco caboose, was built in 1927, and I restored it up, and I spent 2 years restoring it. Yeah, there's been a many a happy hour in this car here.
Whether Johnny Marietta is in his caboose, his passenger car, or just flirting with past memories, you can almost bet he's thinking about trains.
I don't know, railroad goes through my mind all the time. Like I said, I'm 71 years old. I hope I never grow up.
For Johnny Marietta of Pittsburgh, growing up might take all the fun out of life. This is Larry Hatteberg.
Larry's voice sounds a little different back then, but
I don't know why that is.
I wonder why.
Well, I think my voice was different back there, and I think as you get older, at least I've noticed it with mine, my voice keeps lowering and lowering and lowering, and I feel like I'm talking in a basement.
But it's beautiful, Larry.
Well,
the
you're very
lower, the prettier.
Well,
That's all I'm going to say.
I had nothing to do with it. Voice came with the body. So what can I say?
It's interesting to note, back to Johnny, that when he was a child, he witnessed his father and sister killed by a train when it slammed into their car.
Yeah, he was an amazing guy. And after he died in 2000, of course, as happens sometimes, everything was auctioned off. The depot had already been torn down by then. But he wanted to collect these full-size cars, and he had them there on his property. Amazing man. Not many people would do that today.
Yeah.
It'd be very costly, but he was one of those old railroaders, and he just loved it.
And now he'll be forever in Hatteberg's people.
That's right.
Well, it's time for us to pull into the station and refuel, but we're going to be back again, pardon the pun, we're going to be back again soon with another excursion down memory lane.
And remember, if you have a question or a comment, hattebergspeople@kpts.org is the email address. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Larry Hatteberg.
And I'm Susan Peters. Thanks for watching. See you later.